with the Mavericks.
Oh, cool.
I'm looking for a little. You. All right. Good evening. Welcome to our City Council meeting Monday, May 21st, 2022. We call this meeting to order, and to start off, Councilmember Fulmer is going to do the invocation and the pledge.
Let us pray. Lord, thank you for another beautiful day in Clemson. Help us to remember how fortunate we are to call Clemson our home. Help us as a council to listen and hear what our residents are saying tonight and every day, and try to always do what's best for our community. Lastly, let us pray for the victims and families affected by tragedy in Uvalde, Buffalo, Newberry, and too many other places to name at this time. In His name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, John. Also, thank you for being here on when we rescheduled the meeting tonight. We appreciate that, and hopefully everybody had a good holiday weekend. And thank you to the ones that serve and the ones that have served in the past. We greatly appreciate it, and hopefully you were able to honor yesterday. With that said, we're going to go now to proclamations. Our first one is scoliosis. Is there somebody here representing? Yes. Your name?
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth, yeah, come on up. Yeah, I'll read the proclamation if you're cool with that. You're the one that sent the email, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. We're glad you're here. And your full name, I'm sorry?
Elizabeth.
Cool. We'll read this proclamation. So this proclamation is Scoliosis Detection Awareness Month. Is June of 2022, whereas scoliosis, the abnormal curvature of the spine, is a condition which affects estimated 6 to 9 million people in the United States, whereas primary onset of scoliosis is between ages 10 to 15, with females being 5 times more likely to require treatment. Whereas scoliosis can cause pain, reduce function, limited mobility, and otherwise healthy children, and approximately 1 in 6 children diagnosed with this disease will eventually require active medical treatment. Whereas screening programs allow for early detection and for treatment opportunities which may alleviate the worst effects of the condition, which is no known cause or cure. Whereas raising public awareness, thank you again for being here, of scoliosis is vital, helping children, parents, and healthcare providers understand, diagnose, and treat this disease and reduce the pain and suffering of those it affects. Therefore, I, Robert Halfaker, Mayor of the City of Clemson, South Carolina, do hereby proclaim June 2022 as Scoliosis Early Detection Awareness Month in the City of Clemson in recognition of this importance in screening programs for and general education of scoliosis. In witness whereof I hereunto set my hand and cause the great seal of the city to be affixed this 31st day of May 2022. Thank you for being here. Would you like, can I hand you the proclamation?
Yeah.
And would you like a picture in front of City Council?
Yeah.
The wave to, all right.
Nobody said no yet.
Yeah.
You don't have to.
Somebody's gonna do it.
No, that's okay.
Cool.
Yeah, I bet you will.
It's more you should bargain for.
Okay, all right.
Awesome. You okay? I'll stick with it.
Let me go to the other side to make it easy.
Okay.
Get away from Robert. That's why I go down.
There you go.
Now we're height correct.
3.
Thank you.
We have a second proclamation, Pride Month, June 2022. Whereas the City Council, and is anybody here? Just want to make sure. Whereas the City Council of the City of Clemson recognizes and proclaims the month of June 2022 as Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender, and Queer plus Pride Month throughout the City of Clemson. Whereas the City of Clemson joins the country in recognizing and honoring the history of the LGBTQ liberation movement and supports the rights of all citizens to experience equality and freedom from discrimination. Whereas all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights, individuals have immeasurable impact for the diversity and the cultural, civic, and economic successes of our country. Whereas the City of Clemson is committed to supporting visibility, dignity, equality for LGBTQ people in our diverse community. Whereas while society at large increasingly supports LGBTQ equality, it is essential to acknowledge that the need for education and awareness remains vital to end discrimination and prejudice. Whereas this nation was founded in the principle that every individual has indefinite dignity and worth, and the City Council calls upon the people of this municipality to embrace this principle and to work to eliminate prejudice everywhere it exists. Whereas celebrating Pride Month influences awareness and provides support and advocacy for the City of Clemson's LGBTQ community, and is an opportunity for all citizens to take action and engage in dialogue to strengthen alliances, build acceptance, and advance equal rights. Now, therefore, we, the City of Clemson, the City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of June 2022 as Pride Month in support of the LGBTQ community in recognition of all residents. In witness whereof, I hereunto set my hand and cause the official seal of the City of Clemson to be affixed this 31st day of May 2022. Thank you very much. Next, we will go to public session, and Councilmember Smith will lead that discussion.
Good evening. Welcome, everyone. This is your opportunity, if you'd like to say something to City Council, make us aware of any issues or concerns that are not already on the agenda as outlined today. So you have 3 minutes to speak. We ask that you state your name, your address, and then sign in at the podium here. And then those who are online, if you want to call in, I'm assuming they can still call in. Raise their hand. So raise your hand in the Zoom call if you'd like to say anything. This is your opportunity.
The proper time to talk about, before I said it, before it is on the agenda, because it's not now.
It's on the agenda.
Yeah, Chris.
It's on the agenda.
It's on the agenda.
If it's on the agenda, we give plenty of opportunity for discussion and opportunity for public comment. If it's on the agenda.
Make sure I didn't miss my opportunity.
No, you have not. You have not.
stay long.
You're great. Yep.
Okay. So at this time, I will close public session and turn it back over to you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Next is the possible approval of minutes for May 16th, 2022. Would somebody like to make a motion?
I make a motion that we approve our minutes for May 16, 2022.
Second.
Thank you both. Any further comments, discussion? Fran, I should have acknowledged you on calling in. Any other comments? If not, all in favor, raise your right hand. See Fran? Perfect. All right. Thank you very much. Reports and discussion agenda. The first is to discuss the ordinance to amend section 4146 of the city code to add the definition of animal tethering. Yeah, you noticed that.
Can't do that.
Add animal shelter requirements and for animal tethering and penalty, chief. Sorry. I'm just,
Okay.
you know, anyway,
It's
all good.
It's a beautiful weekend.
That's right. It's all good. I just enjoy my weekend too much.
Mayor, council members,
I came through. Sorry, chief. Go ahead.
okay, we're here today. I got a referral from the administrator, Mr. Blondeau, after several citizens came forward and voiced concerns about animals that were tethered in the city. This was about late last year, fall of last year. Started doing some research, found some similar ordinances around the state. The one specifically that we honed in on was the one out of Greenville. I put that ordinance out and held 2 public meetings at Littlejohn. One was fairly well attended. The other one wasn't as quite, unfortunately, because of the weather. It was in January. It was after we had the big snow, so I think that kind of
Big snow.
did kind of hold some people back. But then we went from there. In that process, we got a lot of input from people that attended the meeting,
We also had a couple of attorneys from different animal advocacy groups that chimed in. I think one was from like through the South Carolina Bar, having to do with animal rights was one, and another one maybe with the Humane Society. We took all their comments, made the adjustments, and then referred it to the Police Advisory Board, which your chair, Lisa Robinson, is here, as well as I think Dr. King and Ms. Masseri. Did anybody else walk in on this? And they heard this, heard people speak on, for, against, made recommendations. We had a subcommittee that met, made some changes to it, came back, and the copy that you have before you is what they finally voted on to refer to you for consideration. One of the things I'd like to point out is if hopefully you have the colored version that was in your backup, anything in red, with the exception of in the definition section, I don't know how we did this, but in the definition section, animal tethering was added, it's underlined. That's not in our current ordinance. Vicious dog, the red font in, characters in there was added, and then anything that's read beyond that is added. So under the animal cruelty to animals ordinance, those two additional paragraphs are new. The existing that's in black is what's currently in our ordinance. And then section 4.9 and 4.10 is all new, it's all in red. So I wanted to point that out because it's not just about tethering. There's some other definition changes in there to kind of make our ordinances a little more enforceable. And the other thing that I'd like to, I'll have Lisa talk here about what they deliberated and faced and can give you, fill you in on that. One thing I will say before I sit is in the enforcement part of this came up as of late. I was asked throughout the series of meetings and stuff how we would enforce this, and I've always taken an approach, and I've always said we want to educate people first before we become the hammer. And so an option that you have before you, if you decide to move forward with this, is to maybe put some language in there saying that this ordinance is effective on this date. Similar to you see at the state legislature when they pass new law, they say it's not effective till July 1 or November 1, or give a grace period to say between this date and this date, it will be an educational period. It will not be enforceable by enforcement action, but after this date, it will then follow that. And it, as you saw in there, I tried to mimic our existing ordinance for the penalties that we have for social host. So that's why it's kind of worded. The only difference in what you'll see is we removed a step. Instead of social host, you have more steps to go, and they removed a step in this one and only one, I think, at three bites at the apple kind of. But I'll let Lisa fill you in on the rest.
All right, thank you, Chief. So as Chief said, I'm Lisa Robinson. I'm Clemson citizen, president and chair of the Police Advisory Board. So some of the issues that we looked at when we discussed this, and we did discuss this over several of our advisory board meetings, we looked at the length of time for an animal to be tethered outside. We considered citizen needs to tether while away from the home or while in close proximity. We looked at conditions of weather, including weather and environment, where the animal would be tethered, and then the ability for law enforcement to really be able to come in and assess the situation and to be able to actually enforce the ordinance. You'll notice that the language provides conditions under which tethering can occur. And it allows for instances, for example, if it's necessary to tether a smaller animal, maybe because you're doing some kind of, puppy training or something like that, to take those instances into account as well. And it also considers what would be the provision of safe conditions for the animal, so that the animal is not outside during extreme weather. It's tethered so as to prevent injury, strangulation, or entanglement, and that it has access to clean water, food, and shelter. And with regard to what Chief Campos just mentioned with enforcement, so this is listed so that a first violation is a warning, and the citizen has 30 days to make improvements, changes, corrections. A second violation would be a summons, which would be a misdemeanor subject to $200 fine if convicted. And then a third offense, and any subsequent offense would be between $500 and or 30 days in jail. I do want to point out to you, in terms of some of the data on animal-related calls that we've had in our area, there have been 50 animal-related calls between January and May 31st. 38 of them pertain to dogs. That includes 4 bites, 9 malnourished, 5 abused, 5 tied to a tree or tied to a vehicle, 2 injured, 8 loose, and 10 barking calls. So the advisory board, we're really presenting this today. This language we reviewed. We spent numerous time during our meetings discussing this, so much so that we sent it to a subcommittee, came back, discussed it further, voted, and what you have before you is what we approved. We're really putting this before council with the understanding that you may have additional concerns or amendments to what we've provided, but this is the ordinance and the language that we've approved and are presenting to you today. So, do you have any questions? I'm happy to answer any questions regarding the work of the board.
Lisa, thank you very much. Thank you for your committee. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for all your work. I know there's been a lot of discussion and engagement. So we'll start off with council if they have any questions for Lisa, but we also want the public to have the opportunity to also share their comments as well. Any questions from council to Lisa or Chief?
I just have a quick question. So you guys reviewed, are you noticing that other cities are adopting similar ordinances to this? Is there a trend toward being more strict, being more enforced? I'm curious to what we're seeing across our state particularly.
There are cities that have other similar ordinances, but I think Chief can maybe talk to
I
sort
don't
of
have direct
state
data
trends.
as to how trendy it is or anything like that. I just noticed the ordinance that were already in play and worked off of those.
Yes, I had a question. In terms of I know there were 2 public meetings, and one of the questions I have in terms of who was participating at those meetings, that input in the communities that I know probably tether their dogs probably more so than others. Had we got input from those communities about their thoughts related to the tethering of their animals?
I've done outreach into the communities to solicit involvement, and unfortunately, I don't think I got very much involvement. The 2 community meetings were held in at the Little John Community Center, which is kind of center for some of the neighborhoods that we do tend to see more dogs tethered. Unfortunately, there wasn't any involvement at that point.
Okay. And I guess the other question I have is just trying to find out a little bit more about the decision for some of the language. But, I think I asked you a couple of times, but how did the committee define, because I see the information on anti-tethering, and I saw that Greenville had the 2 hours in terms of the tethering, no more than 2 hours in continuous 12-hour period. How did you come to that determination as to 4 hours?
Right, so we settled upon 4 hours. It was an ongoing discussion, and this was the least restrictive amount of time that we came to an agreement on, allowing for people who may have a need to, leave the property, they may be at work, they may, need to come and go, where the animal needs to be tethered within that 4-hour period. Now, there is some guidance, I think, the woman who spoke from the Humane Society and others were concerned that that was too much time to be tethered and would advocate for lesser amount of time, but we settled on 4 to be able to recognize that there are people who need to have additional time where their animal is tethered outside for any number of reasons. And so we, went to 4. There were other discussions where we discussed 6, we discussed 8. Those were considered to be too much time, where no one is actually actively able to monitor the animal or make sure that they're still in safe conditions or okay. So 4 was the number that we arrived at.
And I guess my final question is, this ordinance would do away with individuals tethering their dogs if they keep them outside the entire time. That's what this would do, just eliminate that.
So this provides the conditions under which they can tether for that stated amount of time within a 12-hour period.
Okay. Okay.
How many, did you say, how many calls since January 1st? 5? How many?
So the call,
5 for tethering,
so tied to a tree or vehicle was 5.
was 5.
Yes.
Chief, do you know the outcome of any of those calls? Is that the same area, same call twice, or 3 times? Was it found that the dog was tethered in a way that would or would not live up to this ordinance?
So I do not have that specific information, but I will say a couple of things in regards to that question. One, if we don't have an ordinance that regulates it, people don't know to report it, and so it's underreported as it is now. Second, a lot of the times when we do get a concern about tethering, it's usually coincides with an animal cruelty complaint that the animal is out in extreme weather, or the animal has no food, or the animal, and that comes in more as an abuse call. I don't have enough of the statistics that she gave you today of our abuse calls, if they were related to being tethered, but they're usually tied together. So the dog doesn't have food and it's tied out all night long, or the dog's been barking incessantly all night long and it's tied outside. So there's usually a nexus to the tethering part with those calls, but I don't have the specific data to tell you how many of those animals were tethered at the time that the call came in.
Well, can you also tell us the concentrations of those calls?
Of where they are?
Right.
In town, I would be able to do that if I
Can
wanted
do
to
it, but you
report,
don't have it.
I don't have that information.
Right, could you get that for us?
I can, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And the other question too is, could we also find out, to Bob's point, they may not necessarily be tethered, they also may be in a kennel also, or some type of crate also all night long, barking.
We could look to see if there was a crate reported, yes. Now, I may be limited to if we didn't do an incident report because we didn't find a violation of the law as to what was reported when they initially called us. So if it's not in that narrative, I wouldn't have that information.
Fran?
So just one quick question. Several times in the document refers to the owner and or keeper, which is very unclear language. So who actually gets fined, the owner and or the keeper? And how do you decide which one? And I think in most ordinances, and or is a pretty difficult word to use. So who decides that? And is it the owner, the keeper? Who gets fined and who gets the hit on this?
So in an enforcement world, it's crystal clear, because what we have is individuals who will claim not to be the owner of the dog. So if the ordinance says the owner of the dog, and well, I'm not the owner, I'm just watching the dog, but they're the keeper of the dog. So both of those are in place to keep that loophole out. So whoever is in physical control of the dog at the time is the one who would be cited based on those 2 definitions.
So then is the penalty additive? In other words, if the first time it's the owner and the second time it's the houseman, the keeper, does that count as 2? And I know I'm nitpicking on this, but I think this is important. Does that count as 2 strikes or is it 1 strike for each person?
Mary, I'm going to defer that one to you.
We talked a little bit about the difficulty enforcing that because of the way that students in particular, and I'm just picking on them because they change residences so much. So you might have 4 people living in a house and then 3 of them move away and each one had claimed once to be the owner. And I don't know that I have a solution to that problem. It may be up to the individual investigating officer to determine that, who gets the strike. And then whether it's addressed to the person on the lease or whether it's, I mean, that's really an enforcement issue, but I don't know that I have an answer. We did talk about that because of the problems that we had before the social host ordinance with people accepting responsibility for parties at houses.
Could you change it so that your fines and everything are kind of like either or? So if you know that you've been there 4 times, you wouldn't be a first violation, even if it was the 4th new person showing up, that the discretion of the officer or something, kind of let it run with the dog, so to speak?
Yeah, got that.
Any other questions from city council? If not, Lowell, I'm going to go very quickly. There's one call, I believe. We're going to open it up for discussion. And if you are on the call right now, hopefully you can hear me. This is for animal cruelty and tethering. If you have a question or comment, we do try to limit these comments to two minutes.
He was coming.
Oh, and then we were going to take the call, but okay.
I was gonna say, that's what I was going to
Yeah,
say.
so-
He was gonna take the call.
We're going to take the call, but you have one call, right? There we go. Good. All right.
Okay.
Open up. Yes, sir.
All right, my name is Brian Smith. I'm a resident of Clemson, and I have a couple of concerns about the tethering, primarily because I don't want it to become weaponized against primarily the African American and Latino communities who happen to view dog ownership slightly different than our white citizens. And so, personally, I have been victimized by the dog tethering policy being used as a weapon by having law enforcement show up at my home. And if you know anything about law enforcement interactions with African American males, I think we are increasing the chance of having a negative outcome because the dog was tethered too long. And so I want you all to take that into consideration, that if we are truly talking about being a diverse community, that comes with the responsibility of saying we have to acknowledge that we have differences in how we deal culturally with our animals as pets versus family members, and what that means in terms of how they are tethered outside, not abused, but might be still outside and have access to food, et cetera, but be reported as being tethered outside and abused, which then has law enforcement have to come over and stop by. And in my case, I was washing dishes when the police officer knocked on my door, went to the door not expecting to see a police officer with a knife in my hand and opened the door. Fortunately for me, that police officer didn't respond negatively to seeing me standing in there. And as we were talking, I'm like, oh, you came to see the dog, and I'm waving this knife around. And that could have had some really bad consequences. So I'm speaking not hypothetically, I'm speaking as a person who, we don't even have that law in effect right now. And it could potentially go really, really bad. So I want y'all to take that into consideration. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Do you have suggestions as to how we could amend what's proposed to both increase the health and the welfare of the animal and also address your concerns?
Yeah, I think we need to have a broader discussion on, again, the cultural differences between those groups and how they manage their animals, and really begin to talk about so that whatever policy we come up is fair to both groups. Because when I talk about weaponizing, I'm not talking just about the police. I'm talking about this is an issue of gentrification. First, you say, I got a dog that's tied up, and then you keep sending the police to my house. I get fined, et cetera, et cetera. Then I get moved out of my house because I can't afford it because I'm in jail for 30 days. And now you got my property cheaper than it was supposed to be, and this becomes an issue of gentrification. But before you were my neighbors, my old neighbors didn't have a problem with how my dog was. And so this is one of those things. And if you look at places like Washington, D.C., Howard University, they are dealing with that, how this influx of new people with dogs are changing the dynamics of the neighborhood and requesting services for dogs and having a conflict with the institution and the people of the community. So there's lots of examples like that I really think we need to look at before we can vote yes or no or implement this new policy. I would just ask that council do its due diligence and do that type of research. Thank you.
And can I add to that? If I may add, the reason I asked that question is to the community members, because they have called me, and there is a fear of coming out and speaking. But I am talking and asking them if they would come and have that dialogue with City Council. So I'm trying to see if we can get members of a community out on I said for our July 5th meeting, but as we continue discussions, but it may be better to have some discussions before that July 5th meeting, if we can do that, just to kind of hear a different perspective, because we do have to look at it from a different lens also. Sometimes we don't. And one of the words I'm going to use is, some people don't like this word, but sometimes we look at it from a lens of privilege, and where we can afford and do certain things. And I know we said we could provide those services, but it's not even about providing those services. It's about how I live my life, how I deal with certain things, and if I'm doing everything the right way, then I'm being judged, because I think the Humane Society has determined that tethering is inhumane. But based off of what definition and that information that they're using, how many people who look like, say myself, were part of that discussion because of the cultural piece that sometimes we don't think about. So I think that's important to have that discussion. And to the point about really understanding what are the issues in our community, what's best for this community. I think if we want to be inclusive, we have to take those voices in consideration. And then if we still decide that this is the best way to go, then at least we've given that opportunity. Without that, I think we haven't given that community a chance to be able to share their thoughts.
And I want to just add, with some of my dealings with the folks to the Shaw Center, I recognize the fact that it's a cultural. I mean, I can bring several people that I've dealt with from the Shaw Center forward as well that would say the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Comments?
Elaine Masseri, 204 Wren Street, Clemson, South Carolina. I didn't plan on talking about this, but since two items were brought up, I'd like to say something about determining who the owner of the dog is. Presumably, these dogs are supposed to be tagged. They're supposed to have licenses. So if we go back to whoever owns the dog, we can find out who the owner of the dog is through their tag.
We don't have a licensing requirement. They have a rabies tag that dogs are required to have.
The rabies tag, right, the rabies
so
tag.
You would have, I guess the officer could go to the veterinarian on the tag.
You can,
That might be a way to do it.
Yeah. So, and the other thing, addressing the last gentleman that spoke, I just want to say, remind everybody, this is not about the owners. This ordinance is about the animals. And I will say, and the pets. It's not about us individually. The laws, we can say this about a lot of laws that might point out certain groups of people. I myself, when I lived in the county, I turned in my neighbor. Here in Delwood, I turned in my neighbor, and both of them were Caucasian. And this is just addressing the ordinance itself, and I'm just asking you to consider this. I don't want you to think this is too strict, because our committee has copies of the ordinances for other municipalities, and some of them are much stricter than what we are addressing here. And there's copies available for those. The other issue I want to talk about is item 4.9, item 5, where it talks about the conditions where an animal can be tethered or not tethered. The wording is extreme weather, and I actually had an issue with that. To me, I think if you ask anybody here, we would all have a different definition for the word extreme weather. And in the verbiage for the other municipalities, it actually, in parentheses, cites what this extreme weather is. I don't have a problem with that item. I just think we should put in parentheses tornadoes, hailstorms, whatever, just like is stated in the other ordinances. And lastly, I just want to say, like I did before when I spoke, we here in Clemson, we live in a municipality in close proximity to all our neighbors. And how we treat and tether or not tether or confine our dogs or whatever has direct impact on our neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. I'm the founder of Clemson Paw Partners. Today, we did 40 surgeries to reduce the population of animals that are unwanted. And the people we never see is the Black community or the Hispanic community. And we're open to everybody. So for y'all, don't pick and choose what laws should be followed because of the color of their skin or their culture or whether their economic status. That's wrong. The law is for everybody. And you can't pick and choose. That's my opinion. On this anti-tethering, I want the animals off chains. I want them off tethers altogether. And it can be done. The ordinance that they have right now is 3 pages. You could create an ordinance that would be half a page, and it could be enforced. It's just like Mary said, can't enforce it. I think Liz said there were 50 cases of animal complaints. Were any of those 50 cases anything done to them? I didn't hear the chief say they were. So what makes you think they're going to do it now? They're not. Plain and simple. I'm asking you to trash this ordinance. It's terrible. And every argument that I have given, and I served on the subcommittee, and I suggested in one of the proposals, and the chief wrote it down, to do away with this, but it was never introduced to the Police Advisory Board. Never. There were 3 proposals. Mine was one of them. I don't know what happened to the other 2. So I gave you some really good information, what I've been trying to tell this committee, that is factual information and why what they are proposing will not work. The only consolation I would make on this is that y'all hire an animal enforcement officer to go out here and say, okay, you haven't had your rabies. That's required by state law. Why is a dog chained up with no food or water? It's in the law. And to me, I think y'all need to start thinking with your hearts, because this is a beating heart, instead of thinking of politics, because that's exactly where y'all going to take this, and I don't like it. I want the dogs off chains. And the way you can do it is give them a year. Say, okay, you got a year. Get you some fencing. Let organizations like Clemson Paw Partners and other nonprofits who would be more than happy to raise funding to put fencing up. All right, there was another thing in here that kept saying about protection. So you leave a dog chained outside for protection. Well, if I'm trying to protect my property, that dog's going to be in the house, not outside on the chain, because you don't know if it's barking at a dog, barking at somebody walking down the street. You don't know. So another thing is, I'll go over these, what I have argued over and over about, and it just goes on deaf ear, because everyone on this committee, they don't see what I see. This weekend, we had a dog that was tethered, left by the owner, tied up behind a building. When we got to the dog's neck was totally raw from being tethered. You know what? It had a microchip. Yay! So Joe Police comes out there, we run the microchip, comes back to the owner who's standing right there, and you know what happens? Get the dog up and nothing will happen to you. But who pays the bill? We do. And the guy should have been locked up. They won't do anything. So if you think they're going to do something now, they're not. And it's nothing against the police. It is the owner's responsibility to take care of that animal, to get fencing, to feed it properly, to give it water. not the police, not city council. And I don't care what you say, this isn't gonna work. It will never work. They don't do it now, they don't protect the animals now. What makes you gonna think they're gonna protect them when you pass this law? Nothing. What if I want a guard dog? Some people tether their dogs in front of their house in hopes that the dog will alert them to trespassers and scare people from entering the property. In reality, dogs who have bonded with their families are more likely to alert their owners to potential trespassers. Also, most tethered dogs won't be able to distinguish between family members and strangers. One that really hits home.
Margaret, just make sure, out of courtesy to everybody else.
I'm getting ready to
Yes,
finish
ma'am.
up.
Yes, ma'am.
I didn't know we had a time limit, you didn't tell me.
I
Thank
did
you.
say that at the
Appreciate
beginning.
it.
3 minutes. Yes, ma'am.
All right. We already have a law against animal cruelty. Why do we need to pass another law? Anti-cruelty laws do not effectively address problems with tethering. Unfortunately, in many states, it's difficult and time-consuming for animal control officers to prove that animal abuse is occurring. Can't we just make people sure that our tethering is cruel? Probably not. Are anti-tethering laws unfair to people without fences or enclosed? I hear this argument all the time. So I am asking y'all to be bold, to leave the politics out, leave the color out, leave the economics out. Do the right thing. Do it for the animal. That's what I'm asking you to do, and I hope you will. I hope you'll trash this ordinance because it's terrible. Thank you.
Any other comments? Chief, did you?
Take the signage.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Any other comments? Any calls? Oh, yes. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name's Amanda McGuire. I'm a city resident. I live on Kingsway in Camelot subdivision and also a business owner. I just want to start by saying thank you to the police advisory committee. I know they worked a lot of hours and took a lot of comments about this, and I'm sure that was a lot of work. I just have 3 things that I'd like to say about this. The first one is that it's just a small thing, but when it says food, access to food in item, the point 7 point, it says access to food, but I think it should see access to adequate food, because a dog with unlimited access to food gets very overweight very quickly. And that's such a small, minute thing, I'm sure. It's just, I really like precision of language in ordinances. The second thing is on number 12, where it says that the trolley system must be no less than 15 feet. I think we should take that out, because a 10-foot trolley would add more movement to the dog, and I don't think that would be a problem to add the dog more freedom. So I think the requirement for the minimum length of a trolley system should be stricken. And then the third thing is about the amount of time that the dog can be tethered, and that I think we should strike that. I think if the dog is happy and healthy and it's got adequate food and shelter, that we shouldn't put a limit on it, and we shouldn't limit people who have to work a 12-hour shift to say they can't do this with their dog. And if the dog is provided for and is not a nuisance and is we provide for with all of these other requirements, I think that would be, unnecessary to say 4 hours. And that's all I have.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, last chance. Any calls? Okay. Any other comments? Chief, did you want to say?
Real quickly, a couple of things. A lot of the comments that were brought up in our public meetings. One thing I'll point out, the extreme weather, that was somewhat descriptive, and in that previous description, it put the degrees during the day that it could be, and the low end was 32 degrees. And one of our citizens came forward and said, well, what about a husky? 32 degrees is like a summer's day. So it depended on the breed, and I think without getting too far into the rabbit hole about going down the breeds, we shortened it to extreme weather. Now, it is subjective, but I think we can make a pretty good argument that the condition of animal that it was in when we observed it, coupled with the extreme weather, was the reason for the violation. So I think that could be there. And that brings up the other part of, I know Margaret doesn't like the ordinance because it's so long, but I think we need to give guidance, because as Councilwoman Smith pointed out, there are different segments of society who treat their pets differently, and they have, through generations, have treated their pets that way. And if we don't give guidance, we're going to get stuck with what people have done in the past and what they've been allowed to do for long periods of time. And some of a lot of this is guidance. It's not necessarily a one-point line. Oh, it's 32 degrees. I'm citing you. You got your dog outside. Well, it's got to be a couple of other things. I was driving back from Greer today, and I was on a highway, and it was 3 lanes. And I started thinking, well, if we didn't give guidance on what those lanes, how those lanes were constructed, and what the lines looked like, and what colors they were, how would we know if we were too close to the car next to us, or if we could pass the car, or so on and so forth? So we have a lot of laws on the books that are giving guidance. It's not necessarily something that a police officer is going to use to cite somebody for, because the line on the road is not exactly 20 feet. It's 19 and a half, and I'm going to cite you. No, that line's there to tell you got to stay in your lane. You can't get too close to the car that's next to you. So that's a lot of what this ordinance is trying to do if you decide to move forward with it. There are a few things that pointed out. Now, if you ask my personal opinion, the 4 hours was put in there for a starting point for discussion, because I thought that the city of Greenville's ordinance of 2 hours was too short. And I put 4 hours in there to kind of be in the middle ground, realizing that in some of these meetings, people said, well, if you have to go to work and you're gone at work all day, and there's conditions in the house, or the breed of animal or the type of animal cannot be in the house by itself, and I can't put it in a kennel, and I can't, do these other things that I have the ability to keep the animal outside, then we would probably have to make an adjustment to the amount of time that an animal can be tethered. And there's a lot of conditions out there that we all can think of, and a lot of us are our own pet owners, and we rely on those examples, and then we know pet owners that we probably don't agree with how they treat their pets. So this can easily go down the rabbit hole, as I said before. I welcome the input from the community that would be mostly impacted, and that's why I suggest that in part of those additional discussions that we prolong when we start enforcing it, so we can have that ability to get a common ground. If we decide we want to put these parameters in place, or we decide not to do them at all. But lastly, I'll say this. Please don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There are some definitions in here that have been enhanced as well that have nothing to do with tethering that I would like to see in our city ordinances as well, especially the one where we talk about animal cruelty. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. All right, if there are no other comments, sir.
Yes, William King, 103 Cochran Road, Clemson. I guess the comments I have is, I'm a dog lover, certainly. I live on Cochran Road. There are several large apartment complexes, and we have an ordinance on picking up your pet waste. I mean, I know that's difficult to enforce also, probably. I'm the proud manager of the pet waste station on Cochran Road, and I emptied the bag today, and I'm proud to do that. And also, when COVID hit, I mean, the number of animals that students owned, I mean, it grew greatly. I mean, they're home, they want to adopt an animal, they're walking the animals, there's, poop all over the place. But we've managed with these pet waste stations to educate. And I'm on the police board, and I feel that we need a sound ordinance, not any ordinance that promotes hate or bigotry or racism, but I think we need a reasonable ordinance to start with tethering. And I do believe this ordinance is one. Again, I promoted, as the young lady who spoke before, that we extend the amount of time that a pet owner could tether their animal in a humane way. In the last 1 month, I've helped at least 2, maybe 3 students find their animals because I don't know if their animals are in the house in a crate all day. I mean, gosh, if I was placed in that situation, I if I was the animal, I would be miserable. But I do know that when they let the animals out, many times they're roaming free, and help get them out of the road. And so I think we look at this, we want to prosecute the abuse and the abused animal, but I think this ordinance would also benefit individuals who are just starting to own animals and understand the process for humanely restraining the animal if they need to on an outside tether. Thank you.
There are no other comments. Again, we appreciate all the feedback. Yes, ma'am. We do need to, after this, so Elaine, yes.
She mentioned the length of the trolley should be, and remember, this is just one length. This dog is going back and forth. Should be 10 instead of 15. The reason for that is if you've ever had a dog confined to this trolley, it's going to, and 10 feet is not very long. That's not a very long distance, and you've got their water, you've got their food, and plus they have to go to the bathroom. And they're going to be running back. It just gives that length, 10 feet's not enough for all that, because they're going to be tracking through number 2 and all that. As far as the 12 hours, all kinds of things can happen in that 12 hours that you've left your dog tethered. Extreme weather, as stated, can happen. That's all I need to say.
Again, we do appreciate all the comment, discussion. There'll be follow-up. And like we say for every discussion item, not just this tonight on animal cruelty and tethering, any discussion, our city council is very receptive to comments, feedback, email, calls, you name it, to talk about this. And so please reach out, and they know I say this because we all lead by example. So please share your comments. I will reiterate that for the discussion. So thank you again for the discussion tonight. We are going to move to the next item to receive a proposal for an engineering design improvement report for pump stations 5 and 7, along with gravity line upgrades to pump station 2. Benji. 7, did I say? I'm going to eventually have to get glasses. I'm going ahead and amend it.
I cleaned mine before.
It's on video. I'm going to eventually have to get readers. All right. Thank you, Benji.
Thank you. We have an opportunity to possibly upgrade 2 of our pump stations and upgrade some lines with the new ARA money. The state, Senate, and House have both approved $900 million worth of projects that are going to be administered by RIA in South Carolina. And to do that, we need to be on the clean water comprehensive priority list. And to do that, we've got 2 pump stations that were actually built in 1982. Both these pump stations are, number 7 is definitely too big to fail. We don't want that any failure. And number 5 is, that handles all downtown flow. So we need to make sure those are in good shape. But these stations need an engineering study to make sure that we put in there what we need to put in. And we're estimating the cost with the interceptor line coming into 7 at about $6.5 million. We have an opportunity to get 85% grant on these stations, and I think it'd just be a feather in our cap if we could do that. We have a proposal from Madura, which is Design South professionals out of Anderson. They've been working with us for years. They know these pump stations, and they've done a lot of the preliminary work for us. So I'd recommend that we approve doing a preliminary engineering report for this project, so we can hopefully get some money to help do these lines and take some of the burden off our ratepayers.
Questions, comments for Benji? You got it back there in the audience. I love it. No, Benji, thank you for presenting
you.
this. This is, I'll just make my own personal comment, that I think it's a great opportunity when we're looking at our part, 15%.
Right.
We're looking at the possibility 85% of the pump station infrastructure.
$5.5 million is a nice, would be a nice project.
We appreciate you finding out the research on the grant and the opportunity here. Any other comments?
The good thing about this is there are gonna be a lot of people doing pipe projects. This is a pump station project, so hopefully the competition will be a little bit less. So we know we can get this completed in time.
Any other comments? Discussion? Thank you, Benji.
Thank you.
All right, Catherine, I believe you're gonna discuss the next item.
I
item
believe
C.
I am. Thank you, Mayor. So as many of you know, we have been the city's been hosting more events downtown, more events at Nettles, more events, well, everywhere. And one of the things that has come to our attention is that it would be really nice on certain events, not everyone, to have food trucks to participate in city events. For many of us, food trucks are now a way of life. There are advantages to people who are trying to start their business to have a food truck. And so what we're asking, this is a discussion about a way that this is also more inclusive of our entire community. And so we are talking about temporarily suspending the prohibition against food trucks downtown for very specific events. This is not blanket, this is not all days and times. This is just for specific events, such as the On the Avenue events that we have coming up this summer. As you know, that this is a way to bring more people in, which is what we want downtown. So we're not, you would have to be registered, you would have to maintain an operating permit and the appropriate, either the event permit, as Andy has said, or hopefully if we kind of get this going and how this is, then you would just have the appropriate business license or fee. So that is the discussion on the table.
Comments, questions from City Council first?
Well, I can start. I think it's a great idea. So I support it 100%, and I think it's a way to bring in a different audience in some ways, different cuisine, just give people an opportunity to be visible and present opportunities. So just to be able to open that door, because it's really a great event that we're having. And so welcoming, if we wanted to grow and be a good spot, I think this is one way to do that, is to provide opportunities. So, of course, spread that word. And word of mouth is one of the best ways of advertising.
My question is, have we asked Cameron, have we asked Chris, have we asked Doug, have we asked Mr. Oswald how they feel about the food trucks?
I have not, no.
John?
Well, you cited email.
So we got the email that was a survey of food truck ordinance discussion, yes, in the downtown merchants. And you saw the feedback. There was a list. I mean, the number here was 22 different businesses were surveyed. Did you see that?
I did not.
Okay. That was forwarded by Andy, just to make sure.
I'd probably take a little different take than Alicia on it. I mean, I like the idea of food trucks, but I would not be in favor of suspending this as a blanket suspended ordinance. It would take some time. We'd need to craft it, specific to outside on the avenue. That was done for the businesses downtown to promote them and not for outside competition to come in. If they reach a point where we're so busy that we're bursting at the seams and we need it to help supply those, that's a different story. And I don't know this number, to me, for food trucks, we're talking about businesses that are in town, located in Clemson. It's not just a hospitality tax. They're corporate citizens, there's property taxes to go with that building, there's the folks that are spending in town. So if a food truck, for example, if we're going to go down the road of allowing them in more places doing things, to me, it's going to be very important, is their base of operations in the city of Clemson. Not just they live here, but their truck's registered in the county. It needs to be a business that's in the city of Clemson, so.
Well, there's never been that incentive before because they've never been allowed to operate.
Right.
So
why
would you register in Clemson?
So if you tweak the ordinance, because this is a discussion, if you tweak the ordinance to where if you're registered as a business in the city of Clemson, you can do it, well, then they have their incentive, that barrier's removed.
Well, that's
So
what
I'm
we're-
not willing to just peel it off and let people from outside come in and compete with our businesses that are working hard in our community first. I'm more inclined to say, hey, we're providing the environment for you to be successful. You have an ordinance that if you're in the city of Clemson, you're based here, then you're gonna be able to work and we'll have to work out the details of where and when.
Well, I think that's what people want.
But I'm not gonna suspend it, and when they're here, we'll do it, in my opinion. That's one vote, so.
We're gonna go to Fran. You're
You're
on
muted,
mute.
Fran.
Wait.
Sound good?
Okay, I still think it's a good idea after reflecting for another 2 seconds. And John, I don't think there's a problem with competition. I mean, people should get as many opportunities to eat as many places they want. But I think obviously this can take a lot of tweaking, like, and I don't know much about food trucks. So is it first come, first serve? You know, if you're the first one there that night, you get the spot. Is there a limited number that has permanent spots? Who decides sort of priorities? Is there an attempt to get a differentiation in kind of food? What's the sort of, what's the process for food trucks showing up and selling?
One of the discussions, Fran, has been that yes, it would be different food that is not in direct offer downtown. But obviously we can't guarantee because everybody can add things to their menu, that's fine. I know Evolve has things that vary weekly. So yes, that's one of the attempts, is to add some diversity, including food, people, opportunities to this. And it would not be blanket. I want to be clear about that. We're talking about 2 events this summer so far as a test run. That's not a blanket. And so, yeah, that's exactly the thing, Fran, is, and we would like to, if we can do this, is then you create a list and we work out how you rotate through that opportunity. Because right now we were thinking that there was only room downtown for maybe 2 or 3, depending on the setup for on the avenue, for example. Really not 3. We think we decided on 2.
Other comments?
I share John's concern with, you know, we do have businesses downtown that are paying property taxes, have brick and mortar stores. So I think if we were going to go down this, you know, and it looks like from the email that our local located businesses weren't overly supportive of this idea at the moment. And I think we have to think about this a lot with what the fees and charges are to make it, if we were going to allow this, that it is fair to those downtown businesses. And it, you know, beyond just a pay your $25 business license fee and then a percentage of what you did that night, I think there would need to be a pay-to-play fee that would, you know, give them skin in the game and would be attractive, that would acknowledge, you know, that they are being allowed to come in from outside the city of Clemson if they're from outside, and maybe we could get a break for people that were located in the city of Clemson.
Well, the impetus for this was that we don't do anything, as much as we talk about entrepreneurship, we do very little to actually encourage it. And this is one small way that we can encourage not only more diversity and inclusion in our community, because we isolate events for our minority population. Oh, you can go over to Little John. You can't come downtown. You can go to Little John. And that's what we just did for the Black Business Expo. And so this is a small way for, 6 hours out of the summer to bring some diversity and some inclusion to our community. And I think that yes, and then we can see if it works. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe there's not the demand. Maybe we need to then figure out how much people make and we figure out the fees. I just think that instead of just talking about diversity and inclusion, we could actually do something about it.
Well, then why couldn't you do it for Juneteenth?
We can do it for.
Well, that's a different scenario, though. That's.
I'm not following the diversity.
I know, but the
but
point
you're
I'm
saying
trying-
all food truck owners are minorities and diversity?
We're
I
saying
mean,
a greater percentage of them are than our owners downtown, yes.
but again, I go back to mine, and this is why I wouldn't just do this now. I would craft ordinance that if you have your business registered in the city of Clemson with your food truck, then we do create that opportunity. But anyway, I've said it out. I'm just repeating myself. We do too much of that.
Well, I guess I looked at it too, but it gives businesses that don't necessarily have an opportunity to be a part of an event that we have in the city of Clemson. And Catherine may not necessarily say, but I think we could look at women and, minority-owned businesses to be a part of that, because that's another issue, is because of the cost associated, a lot of times do not have the opportunities to be a part of these type of events. And so we're talking about a few hours, a couple of days in the year where you could suspend that. And we're not talking about 5 or 6 trucks, we said maybe 2 trucks, where you can come in and provide that opportunity, or some type of different cuisine that people can have. I don't necessarily see that will impact the revenue in such a way that they will have to close their businesses. But I did say that if we needed to provide some type of fee, licensing fee or business fee, as a part of that, then that may be something that is feasible. I think that's fair. It should not necessarily be free. There should be some, there's some cost to it, but I think it's an opportunity for us to be, for me, to say more inclusive, and welcoming, because if we look at, who some of our participants are, it's not as inclusive, as it could be if you have other opportunities to bring different aspects to the event. So yes, I think it would be.
Fran?
So I think we kind of do this now, right? We don't stop delivery trucks or people delivering food because the restaurant or the fast food place is not in Clemson. We let them come in and deliver food from Pendleton or from Seneca or wherever. So we don't really stop that already. That's allowed. That's competitive business. But I think the other point, and I don't know enough about this, but we let other companies not based here compete with companies that are based here. We just charge them a business license, right? So the fellow that mows my lawn and takes care of my lawn care might compete with a local Clemson lawn care service, but we don't tell him or her, you can't do that. We charge them a fee and make it equitable in the city. So, this might take a little examination, but I think we already let food cross our border. We already let people cross our border, even if they're not here in terms of businesses. We charge them to do it. I think it's great. It gives people a chance to vote with their stomach, and if they want something different. But I think we do have to regulate it. We do have to have business fees, whatever that's fair. But I don't think we're in the business of shutting out other competitors just because they don't reside or located in Clemson.
You're talking about just for events, right?
Mm-hmm.
Council-sponsored or council-approved events. I was thinking about in the past, you suspended the open container thing for special events downtown. And so I kind of look at it that way, that if you did it on an event-by-event basis, then council would have control over the parameters or the requirements for doing that. I'm kind of a fairness person, so, I would feel like if you're having a special event and you're having it at a location, whether it's College Avenue or it's at one of the parks, I'm kind of the opinion that you do license everybody, but you charge everybody the exact same thing, whether it's a smaller fee because it's a special city event or not. That would make your whatever ordinance you come up with kind of easier to control. But if you're still approving event by events when someone comes to you and proposes something, or when you're sponsoring something, then you would maintain control over that. And if it's fair, if it's the exact same fee for everybody that wants to have a food truck there, then I don't see that as being excluding anybody or failing to include everybody. It just levels the playing field for anybody that wants to have a food truck. And I think I saw in the cover sheet that they still have to have a DHEC license. They can't just randomly come in with food that's not healthy or something,
Yeah, I can't pull up in my wagon and just serve it out.
Start serving out of the back of the station wagon, yeah. But I was thinking, I could definitely draft something for you all to look at along those lines. But I was thinking about it being more like when you suspend an existing ordinance for a city-sponsored event downtown.
Well, my thought would be, if you wanted to do something special at Nettles, or you wanted to do something special at the 12 Mile, or whatever the case may be, for those types of events, I could see doing that. I can't see rolling 2 or 3 food trucks in downtown on top of our current business.
Beverly and the lights.
Beverly, yeah.
I just wanted to make it clear that there are licenses that involve
We discussed that, and the challenge, the good part was on the avenue events for the summer, A, represented a really good test case, and B, the tables were already there. And so, unfortunately, we don't have that kind of picnic set up anywhere else. So that was the challenge, but you're right, I would love to do, Lindsay and I talked about it, we would love to do food truck Fridays. Where? And so that rapidly became our challenge. So this was a test case, it is a test case.
Hi, something I wanted to mention, because the Police Advisory Board and I are going down the road of looking at a special event ordinance. And more specifically, it's for special events occurring on privately owned property, because we already have an ordinance that talks about special events on publicly owned property. But a lot of what you're discussing is part of this process, and the part that I'm looking at is the public safety part of it. So on the avenue may not be as much of an issue, but on confined space locations where there are occupancy limits, food trucks then fall into a different category under the fire code. So that may be an unintended consequence. So what I was thinking was our open container ordinance gives the city administrator the ability to waive the open container ordinance for permanent events. You might be able to amend the zoning ordinance to give the administrator, for just on special events by permit only, to waive the food truck requirements under the zoning just specifically for that event. That way it doesn't have to come before council every time, and Andy would have that authority to waive it. Just a thought.
Appreciate suggestions. We're gonna go very quickly to, there's a caller that's been on there.
We had, Carrie Fuller, she had her hand up. Carrie, just tell her I allowed her to talk. She can unmute.
She did.
And just to make sure, this is discussion on the food trucks. Carrie, if you're on, and we do try to limit the discussion to around 2 minutes. You're muted right now.
She's talking to my name.
Under a text.
You can come back, then we'll come back. All right, please, anybody from the audience that would like to share comments.
Good evening. My name's Chris Fuller. That was my wife. I'm a resident of 225 North Clemson. I also own Evolve Kitchen and Table and that in Loose Change in downtown Clemson. Do any of you have a brick and mortar store anywhere? Have any of you ever opened a brick and mortar store anywhere? Okay. So we open and take a great risk to do so, stores, restaurants, retail, what have you, in whatever location we choose. Those locations, when they come open for rent, are available to everybody. So if somebody wants to take that leap, they're more than welcome to. And trust me, we opened Evolve 6 months before we had to shut it down for COVID. So you want to talk about standing over a ledge? Been there. When you guys want to do this downtown, seriously, our rent, if you have no concept of what our rent is and what we pay every single day, or what we bring and hospitality fees. I don't know if you know what the real number is, the actual numbers. Okay, great. Okay, so you do. Those are paid day in, day out. We also pay rent when we're not open. We also pay property taxes when we're not open. We're not choosing when and where we want to be mobile. I love food trucks, don't get me wrong. But as it was brought up, this event in the downtown corridor was meant to help bring people back downtown and revitalize the businesses down there after having such a hard time. Nettles, awesome. Have food truck Friday at Nettles. Catherine Smith Plaza, park them in there. Use, do it down there. But if you park a food truck in front of my restaurant, I'm not going to be happy. I guarantee you nobody else will either, and that will be the most anti-business statement that you guys can make as a whole. Seriously, with the parking, and I pay all my parking tickets without saying a word. And you can ask the clerks. They love it. They're like, really? You don't want to argue? No, I know what the rule is. I know a lot of people feel differently. If you say they can come down, that's the same thing as saying, well, why can't I have or own that spot, right? That's the feeling you're gonna put out there. I promise you. And if you haven't read the email, I haven't been privy to it. My thoughts are there. Hopefully you guys will share that at least with the group who contributed to it. I don't know if that's allowed, or publicly if that's allowed. You don't have to share it now, but you have our emails. Sandy's got everybody's email who's a merchant downtown.
The email did not share any business names.
Okay.
Just shared comments.
Well, they came by.
Thursday.
That's fine. No, I contributed to it.
It was sent out Thursday by Andy.
Okay. And I know who collected the information, so if they want to forward on what they put together, then I'm sure I can get it. But I'm really imploring you guys to not try to turn College Avenue into a food truck corridor. It's a struggle. I won't go over numbers, but I operate June, July, and most of August, actually all of August, at a loss. And I have to keep my staff, so I got to pay them. I can't shut it down or say, go somewhere else. I won't have them back. So, and we take that risk when we open a business in downtown Clemson. We understand how the cycle works. It doesn't make it any easier, but you have to understand it, right? So people coming in, it feels very predatory, if that makes any sense. Like I said, if there's an open space down there, there's been several open. There's a lease sign on top or right up front. I'm sure they'd be happy to take someone else's money. So anybody's welcome to go and start any kind of business they want if there's a space available. We didn't have that opportunity until one became available, and we seized it. But I took that leap. I put my money up and my time, and I spent hundreds of hours working to get that place ready and open. I worked 2 full years worth of 40-hour work weeks in 6 months to get that place open. It means a lot to me and my family. And if you put a food truck in front of my place, one or the other, and it pulls business away from my opportunity cost is shot. And I got to go tell my kids, sorry. Think about it like that. If someone plopped something in front of your business and it had a similar, they serve, not even similar food, but still, in a parking space in front of you, you'd be a little upset. I promise you that. So please consider this a little bit more. And come down and talk to us. Come on, you got my number.
I know where you live.
You know where I live. Maybe today, but that's all I have for you guys. And I really want you to consider it. And really, please, if you have any questions, I'll try to answer.
I do have one question.
Sure.
Because I totally understand where you come from. My brother owned a restaurant, and I know the troubles he had, the struggles. He wound up having to close it. And so it is a challenge, and the food is great at Evolve, so
Thank you.
The smoked wings are delicious, so I recommend those for anyone.
Hey.
But my question is, because we understand not putting it in in front of you. But I guess the question I have
Sure.
is because the competition is there even if the food trucks aren't there. You still have that competition piece. So if we're talking about being a welcome and inclusive community, and we're talking about just one day, a couple of hours, if that gives those businesses who may not have opportunities, because I hear what you're saying, but sometimes it's just not as simple as that for some other businesses. Could that?
It's definitely not as simple, I promise you that.
Could there be, no, I'm not saying, but, so sometimes it's even harder for other businesses too. But if there's opportunities for that one day or a couple of hours, would that be so bad?
Well, in this particular situation, on College Avenue, yes.
Okay.
Because we have all the staff, front of the house staff, all these servers who, like, it's slim in the summer. And some of these kids actually pay their way through school and pay their own rent. Not all of them, but there are some. And majority of the people we employ, I would say, in the server and bartender area are college students. That's who applies. But they, so they don't get a set rate. Like, they're working their way through tips. So, like, they see these as, oh my God, this is gonna save my month. I'm gonna pay my rent with this day, right? And it could be those 3 hours could make could literally make the difference between them keeping their lights on, paying the rent. And it's a difficult landscape for them, for the business owners, for everybody. And I'm talking about primarily the downtown College Avenue area. We make an assessment when we start a business down there. Like, all right, what is the competition? If there's 18 sub shops, I'm not opening a sub shop. And that's kind of the typical thing I think most businesses would do. They're not gonna, unless you're in a food court in a mall, which is kind of the feeling that, we get here, is that you wanna bring people and have all this stuff, but the mall is the one that wins on that. And I don't think that that's what the city is trying to be, but that's with the fees and stuff, who takes care of my rent that day? I mean, it cost me $1,000 a day to open the door. That's before, so that's gotta be considered. And that.
Lowell, hold on, Lowell, you were.
We have carried,
Okay, John. Add to that.
Yeah, all I want to say about Avenue on the Alley, we did that for one reason and one reason only, and that was to bring business back to this crowd, okay? And so I think that's a very bad situation. If it's about tables and chairs and you want to do a food truck event somewhere, we can make that happen. If that's what it's going to take to make that happen. So do it somewhere else. And you got all kind of athletic events going on all summer long out at Nettles Park. On those Saturdays and Fridays and whatever, roll them in there and do it. That's a great time to do it because people are out there for hours on end, and it's an opportunity for those food trucks to come out there. It's not going to hurt him. It's not going to hurt the rest of them downtown.
I can't move the building, so.
So I mean, that's a perfect situation. Or do something out at Nettles Park, or not Nettles, out at the 12 Mile on the 4th of July weekend and roll them out there or something. But if you want to experiment with it, fine. But I mean, we did avenues on the alley for a specific reason.
If we can.
I'm gonna interject real quickly on 12 Mile.
Well,
Just before we put that out there, the Corps of Engineers pretty much tells us what to do out there. I will defer that to Andy and Mary, that we have to get permission.
But not in Nettles.
Not in Nettles.
Right.
So I just wanted to make sure I clarify.
Or bring it out to the pump track, on a Saturday.
That's what I wanted to do,
Right.
but.
I mean, it's a big additional draw, but not.
Clemson Park is the same as under the city, correct?
And during the ball game.
Absolutely.
It's not that was it. It was the issue of the supplies and in our challenging times of having, however much Lindsay's gonna tell me it was for us to get a whole bunch of tables and chairs, but it's not cheap to purchase them.
Can I ask a question?
To do the table and chairs for the College Avenue event, when we rent them, it's $650. But in the budget, come July 1, we are purchasing tables and chairs for half, that the city will own.
So that it will be this year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not.
Okay.
Where's that, what fund? Where does that money come from? Hospitality?
Hospitality.
Just checking.
Is Carrie
Like
still
you
on
knew the
there?
answer.
Carrie, can you hear us?
I am. Can you hear me? And Chris, it's going to be all right. I just want to add that if inclusion and bringing, various things from out of town, someone mentioned early on in the discussion that, it would be a good idea if we were overwhelmed as businesses downtown. My thought is 7 Saturdays out of the year, block the streets off and bring in the food trucks when there are 100,000 plus people in town to really expose everyone to the diversity. I really don't see how doing this 4 Tuesdays a summer when every brick and mortar store is fighting for every penny, that this is a good idea. The only way that it would work, in my opinion, is when there are an influx of people in town, such as football Saturdays. So that's my 2 cents there, because right now, in my opinion, it's a money grab from the city to take the business licensings and things from out of town, while we as brick and mortar restaurants lose money. And with that, I'm going to mute myself again.
Okay. And Chris is gonna strangle you when you get there.
Yes, probably, but I'm prepared.
You heard that. All right. Any other comments, questions? Thank you, Chris.
Honestly, if everybody who's got a store down there is willing and open to talk, and probably in a little calmer tone than I am right now. I'm a little worked up, and we'd be happy to discuss this and give you the ins and outs of our problems. And I've never been one, ask Lindsay, I will be pessimistic about everything. If we can cover all the bases, all right. But we got to cover the bases. So.
Well, I think that's fair, because Chris was one of the people when we decided to do the outside avenue, came in and sat down and talked and went through all the potential pitfalls for all the businesses. I think he and that group want to find a way to make it work. I think everybody does, but this just isn't right now, I feel like.
I'll find all the problems. If we can solve them and have solutions to all those, let's go.
And Chris, I'll reiterate what I said before on the animal cruelty. Same thing, reiterate, open communication.
What?
But no, what I'm saying, open communication with
communication.
everybody.
No, what are you talking about?
Don't compare apples to apples. That was apples to bananas. Yeah. What I'm saying, Chris, let's make sure I clarify my comment. You have,
in addition to
open discussion, open dialogue with anybody on city council, and like you said, you gave an open invitation for anybody to come down, patronize businesses downtown.
Don't even have to come in and buy anything.
Not even just downtown, throughout Clemson as well. So
absolutely.
Please reach out with any discussion, and we will make sure, and this is what I will say, we'll make sure this email right here that got feedback that I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Doug from Your Pie sent out. We'll make sure.
I want to say names. I just want to make sure you got it right.
No, when I say that, it was solicited from, we wanted to make sure we had discussion, and we wanted to make sure we had input from all businesses downtown, so.
I'm sorry not more of us showed up. So.
Sorry about the comparison. That's apples to bananas.
Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you. Any other comments, discussion?
Robert,
Yes.
you got me thinking when you mentioned the 12-mile lease.
Yeah.
I'll go back and reread it, but I'm pretty sure you could let them operate in there.
Well, I know, that's the main thing, is we have to get permission to make sure they're.
Yeah, I'll have to verify.
Because remember, we talked about one time having food in there, and we looked at the lease and we said we'd have to go to the court to get permission. But they could consider it. I think that's what it was, but I just want to make sure it's not a city decision.
Well, I think
Solely.
Solely.
Yeah. And it's very circumstantial, but they've given us a lot of freedom and latitude.
No, they've been very good to work with. I agree, so,
So
thank
are
you.
we gonna come back to discussion to identify a location, or are we,
I will work on that.
okay?
All right, any other comments? If not, we'll move to the next item. Ally?
Thank you.
All right, I'll just jump right in. Yep. Please
Thank
jump in.
you. And I'll actually pass the floor to Meredith, the Chair of the Public Arts and Culture Commission.
Hi there.
Hi.
I'm here as the last step of finalizing the garden shed mural. The garden shed is located on the United Methodist Church property. However, the city owns the shed. As you may remember, the Public Arts and Cultural Commission representative came to the city in the fall and gave an outline of what the public art priorities were, and the garden shed mural was on this list. In addition, in the early part of this year, a rep came back to the city council and gave an updated list, and the shed was on this list. As a reminder, this idea came from to the commission through a community member that is an avid gardener and has a plot in the garden. This mural will enhance the gardens and the enjoyment of the space. Once the garden shed mural is approved, we'll begin doing a call for artists. We will be involving the Art Center, the community member that entrusted us to carry out this idea. And once we have the design chosen, we will ask for the community's feedback. And as a final step, we are going back to the church to get their final blessing before it is painted.
Questions, comments?
I think it's a great idea. I think that'll look good. Will the church give any input on the criteria on the front end, or they'll just be on the back end totally?
Just on the back end.
No other comments, questions? Keep moving forward. That's the way I look at it, unless someone tells otherwise. So thank you. Thank you for the time and energy and keeping it going. We all look forward to the final project.
Excellent.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Staff reports, Andy.
All right. We are interviewing engineering firms to do all of our ARPA utility work this week. We started last week. We'll wrap that up by the end of this week and probably have a recommendation for you at your next meeting. Next week is the ITGA conference. Sunday night, Kite Hill was having a reception. That's one you had to register for. And then we're going to be spending some time inviting all the people to come downtown. And then we're also having a reception over at the Snow Center on campus. Development Strategies Workshop Part 2 is tomorrow at 5 p.m. You want to register for the conference? I think we're still able to take some registrations, although we're getting pretty capped, aren't we? We're at over 250 people right now.
We have everyone signed up.
Okay. We got a space for all of council, and you guys paid a lot of money to be here.
For example, you just said register for Sunday. I have not registered.
Yeah, I hadn't
for
registered
Sunday
for anything
night.
other.
Oh, there we go. Thank you.
I have not registered for Sunday night.
We registered.
Who registered?
I was gonna say, I got some kind of
So we're all
email.
registered for everything.
You just show up.
Except Catherine?
Okay.
Hendrick Center and
I'm not going to ITG.
Well,
But the other one is at Snow, right?
Okay.
Snow.
yeah, there's one downtown, then one at the Snow Center.
Okay.
Snow's on Monday night and
I just mentioned the Sunday night because it wasn't on the website calendar.
Okay. All right.
For my reports.
Okay. All right. We'll move into policy action agenda. Remember, the discussion is 2-minute limit per speaker on any of these items. So the first is A, consider first reading an ordinance to adopt the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget. Andy, I believe you and Leslie.
Yeah, Leslie's here. I'm going to give you a couple highlights here, and then Leslie's here Allison's here to answer any questions you might have as well. This year's general fund budget is $15,915,100. That is up 10% from last year. The reasons for that are a 1% required increase in state retirement, inflationary costs such as gas, and we're doing some studies, about $350,000 worth of studies that are required for us to assess our rates and impact fees to make sure that growth is paying for growth. We can't arbitrarily do these. State law requires an engineering study be done on any of these things. This general fund budget is proposed with a 5.25 mil increase in property taxes and a base water fee increase of 77 cents, a base sewer fee increase of $3.22. Also, a proposed increase in the sanitation fee from $12 to $15. One of the things we're looking at here is a cost savings measure. Is actually trying to take advantage of this market, is that the recycling market is down considerably. We're going to be using impact fees to buy new packer trucks so we can add to the number of, need to increase our sanitation because we've got more carts to tip. Problem is there's a 1-year lead time on that. And the truck is no good without employees. So we figured, well, we don't need to hire the 2 new sanitation workers to operate this truck if we're not going to have the truck for a year anyway. The market being what it is for recycling, we're proposing to suspend, not cancel, but suspend curbside recycling and reallocate those people to other sanitation duties. We will still need to retain the truck because we're going to set up a recycling hub at the Public Works facility, and we are going to work with the university to recycle what material can be recycled through their private partners. We will still need the truck to transport what can't be recycled to the county and to get the recyclables to the university. That will save us about $125,000 a year, and it will allow us to be more responsive to things like leaf pickup, and furniture and appliances and those types of services. So those are the highlights of the budget. Coming up here, it was a tough one to do. There's a lot of unexpected and unforeseen costs just due to the conditions that we're in right now. So I'm here to take any questions.
Questions?
We don't have questions, discussions.
Questions?
Or discussions or comments.
Or comments, discussions, all of the above.
What is our cap? I know that those have come out. What's our cap with catch-up on the amount of millage that we can raise property taxes by? I know we're suggesting you've got 5.25 in here. What is the
percentage, and I'd have to look real quick, and I can look before we finish tonight, but the percent I got today, or yesterday, was 4.3, and then 1.05 was, I think 1.05% was the population, and it was 4.3, I think.
Sounds like 5.74 or something?
Percentage.
Percentage.
And so you'd multiply that by the 80.5 to know what the millage, the exact millage. But it's above, it's more than what y'all are proposing, or we're proposing as the 5.25. If I'm not mistaken, I ran the calculation today, and I apologize, I should have written it down. It leaves us like 3 extra meals, I think, 3 plus.
We've got some catch-up in there, because 5.74% of 80.5 mils is 4.62 mils. So.
But we had some other, from previous years. We had some previous.
But you're saying, so we could go somewhere up to 8.25?
Something like
Somewhere in that range.
And I can look real quick.
Okay. Yeah. And, I think that's all about the millage. Just if you can verify that, what we can do. Right. The other things, one of the other things that I want to discuss, and did some numbers today, and I know I asked for this last year, and I asked for it in an email from Parks and Rec earlier this year, was to do some cost recovery analysis to see where we are on the pricing of our youth and all of our athletic programs and those kind of things. Got some information today, and at the moment, and this is not full cost recovery, what it's costing us for athletic programs to, when you begin to factor in all of the cost of those, is somewhere between $130 and $160 per person that is participating in our athletic programs. We're charging $60 for in-town people, and we're charging $90 for out-of-town people. And that's a very conservative estimate. When I have time to dig in, I bet it's costing us over somewhere in the neighborhood of $200 per person. I have way less of a problem and think that we should be subsidizing in-town people, but we've got a large 30% of our people are coming from out of town, and we are subsidizing out-of-town people that are not paying property taxes and general fund taxes. Our cost recovery in Parks and Rec right now is somewhere in the neighborhood of 20%. I'd say the average around the state from fees and revenues is probably somewhere in the 35% range, but many places that are doing well and have a market are doing, more than that, and have cost recovery as high as 50, 60, 70%. from fees while still subsidizing local people. So we are heavily, heavily subsidizing, and I think we need to talk about the fees that we are charging, because there's some philosophical reasons to do that with how we operate and size of program and right size of our programs. We have plenty of local kids in Clemson to have healthy league play, even if every kid from outside of town decided to not participate in our programs. And we are subsidizing those kids with general funds. So I think we need to have a serious discussion about that. My proposal is going to be that we raise our fee for in-town people a little bit, because it's a really heavy subsidization already. And out-of-town people should be at least paying our break-even point as a fee to participate in our programs, which are the highest quality, best programs in the area.
I really have a problem with raising that, especially for in-city right now. The last thing anybody needs is one more fee raise, one more anything raise. And it's not, it is something, you're right. You're absolutely right. I love our Parks and Rec department, absolutely. I would ask that we delay that conversation by 1 year.
Yeah, I'd be comfortable with that for in-town people. For out-of-town folks, I'm not comfortable with that at this time, because again, we are subsidizing other towns not taking responsibility for their own kids, because we are offering a very good deal. And it's having an effect on our facilities and what we can do, because of the way that we're operating now.
I don't think you're wrong, but I think this is a conversation from a month or 2 months ago. I think that's a big change.
And again,
to the budget
I asked for this last year, and we.
And again, I'm not saying you're wrong, but I just don't feel like that tonight in the budget right here.
But again, if we're going to the
change it.
budget, this is not, again, the way that we have budgeted for years is not the way that we should be organizing our budget and paying for things from sources and revenues that we can generate. That's why we are in a situation now. As we're moving forward, we have big things coming up that we need to pay for, and we've got to do it. We've got to do it now.
Andy, has it changed at all? Do you know the percentage of kids from Pendleton or Central who are participating?
We looked at baseball specifically today. 30% of it, it's like 60-30-10. 60 Clemson, 30 Pendleton, 10 Pendleton, 30 Central. I think across the board, it's roughly a little over 30% out of town. We do all sports. But we did look at the baseball specifically because we had that data readily available.
And right now, I know Andy ran a number today that Central should be paying us to even get to like our very low end break point, something along the lines of $113,000.
If you took the fees everyone pay cover your uniforms and your operational stuff. Where the general fund is subsidizing it is in your overhead and personnel. So we're bringing in $108,000 in athletic fees. We have $107,000 in program costs. But then there's like another $480,000 in overhead and personnel. So if you took
and I subtracted out a good portion of that.
Yeah, I had more in there than he did. It did not have equipment, depreciation, or any of that in it.
But there were still things that were missing.
This was low-end stuff here we're talking about, but it ended up being, if you used the participation as your percentage, it was like Central would have to pay us $115,000, and Pendleton would be just under $40,000.
My point is, I would rather the city pay us than the individual families.
If they're willing to do that.
I know, that's what I'm saying. I know, that's my point, is if they, because I agree with you, if they are reneging on their responsibilities to their children, then.
Yeah. Maybe I don't understand what we're discussing when it comes to the Central piece, because I believe we've always had a partnership. Is it something we're changing?
But the partnership is really a pretty one-way partnership.
Well,
it is way, 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 way better for Central with a very small benefit to us.
The reason I'm asking that question is because the truth is Central is a smaller community than we are as Clemson. And it's been Central Clemson for many, many years. And there's a, you know, with the basketball, baseball, with particularly basketball and football Central actually runs because the football field is in Central. So our kids go over there to play football, and because we don't have a football league over here. And so we share the rec to some extent. I know we still are the largest contributor, but we, you know, technically we are a larger population, so we have that. So I'm just trying to understand, if we're talking about, you know, external, I can see maybe, you know, places like Seneca, Liberty, Pendleton, places like that, but are we seeing Central too?
Yeah, I mean, it would be
That's-
anybody that lives outside the city limits of Clemson that we are currently subsidizing, and them running football does not.
Well, no,
pay
but I'm
back.
saying, but
Yeah.
we've had, I mean, am I wrong? Has that been that, because the uniforms say Central Clemson, but I'm just asking that question.
They handle all of football and flag football. They take all the administration, all the sign-ups, everything. They cover everything. We do everything else. We do all the registration and sign-ups and administration for.
Well, basketball, I thought, because when I go
No, we
watch,
handle basketball too. They provide some staff support for the nights we're out there. They provide police coverage out there, and then their athletic director also helps attend to, supervise the facility.
I think my suggestion, because of the historical, as Lisa is referring to, the partnership in the context is that, yes, Bob's right, we gotta get to a break-even number, and as Catherine said, she'd rather hear the municipality cover that than the family. I mean, it feels like this needs to be a municipal conversation first, whether it be rec departments, whether it be Andy and Philip or whomever. I don't see jumping all that in this budget until that's done. I know you've asked for it for a year, Bob, and the reality is, we're behind on that. That should have been done, because that should have been factored in when we're doing this. We can't go back and reinvent the wheel, though. So to me, I say going forward, to have that
Reinventing the wheel,
conversation.
this is just a
Well,
pricing philosophy.
For Charles' term, I'm not disagreeing with your philosophy, but I'm saying that the first blush at it should be city to city, department to department, before we jump on the rates, in my opinion.
But that's not the deal. I mean, you know, it's our
I
program.
can disagree with you.
It's our program to decide to price how we need to price the program. And maybe we make jumps, but again, we do this all the time. We delay, and we get further and further and further behind the eight ball with these things.
I'm not disagreeing with you, I'm just telling you the way I would go about it.
Another thing, and you know, I know there was a couple places that still, it looks like we're gonna be below and using fund balance in a few places as well, and wanted to know, what was happening there. That we did, let me get back here to it. Again, in wastewater and, wholesale water, you know, it looks like we're gonna, you know, whatever our rate study is, why are we not getting to break even there? And still going into fund balance?
That's because the rate study didn't take
The inflation
into account. That's what got us. Primarily fuel and, materials.
And one of the other things that we absolutely need to clean up are things like, in our hospitality tax and fee, we are paying the entire cost of a fire engine out of that fee. And while technically we can, that's way outside of the spirit of that law, and the way that is written is that a portion of that is related to hospitality, tourism, and those kind of things should be there. But we've been using those types of added value funds that are supposed to get us new investments for the type of things that make us a better community. We've been covering things that we ought to be covering out of general fund and other places as well. And, you know, that's something we absolutely need to.
The plan is for that to change.
And I know we've got to get the study done.
Here, I'm hoping we take that out and get to replace that with fire impact.
with fire impact, but it's going to take a minute to do that, and it's probably gonna be 2 years realistically before that's spinning off anything based on new development that's occurring. You gotta have new development to occur for that. Those are things that, again, we're missing opportunities because of the way that we have, that we've continued to do that. Things like, this is something, again, today, going through this, police overtime, such as home football games. Why are we not charging the university for things like that? Why are we not saying those are things that we need to work out agreements with you? Because I know if we go ask the university for help, we're gonna get, what's the rate? $42.50 per hour per officer?
We do charge, the university does pay us for that. It's the assignments that are related to order maintenance downtown, the parking deck, and those other areas that the university, it's not directly related to university operations. So any position that has to do with traffic control or whatever, they do pay us directly for that. This is other assignments that I have to pay out of the general fund to staff because I don't have the staff to cover it. And it's not just football games, it's other things as well.
Right. But theoretically, like parking deck, person that's at the parking deck should be paid out of those parking deck revenues that we make during football and new revenues that we're getting there, rather than coming out of hospitality tax funds where possible. And to clean up what we're doing in some of these added value funds so that we can put those to community priorities to, again, help us from a community economic development standpoint, as well.
I was just gonna say one thing about the hospitality tax that you're talking about, the transfer to cover. This was the year that we decided that we would transfer money from hospitality to cover the city events that they have been paying for inside the general fund. So this is not the football weekends. This is more or less to help us with all of our city events.
Right. Oh, and there was things in there, that are absolutely, like the city events, CAM, Art Center, bringing in people, those types of things. That's absolutely great use of those. Some police and fire that's appropriate are absolutely appropriate. I questioned, there was a little bit in there where it came out of out of accommodations tax. We're talking about paying for the, was that where the new mobile rec thing was coming out of? I need my glasses as well.
Got them in your neck.
You couldn't have lost them. I forget that they're there. Yeah,
I think it's out of hospitality.
Yeah.
Let me look.
Out of hospitality tax, the mobile rec unit. For example, and that's not a big ticket item, but that's not something that's bringing in tourism. That's gonna be something that's for local kids. It's not bringing in visitation. Those people that you're taking a mobile rec to aren't gonna be eating in restaurants. Not something that we should be thinking about that from other revenues, like increased fees and charges for our parks and rec services and or general fund, to do those types of things, rather than, we just put anything and everything that we think we can on that, and we've done that. And it's kind of hidden some things that, we're no longer gonna be able to hide, by transferring those to those sources, and we've missed opportunities. So again, I think Leslie and Andy are doing a good job of we're getting there, but we still got some serious budget cleanup to do, to get to the point where we are operating as we should be, so it's transparent to the community and everyone else what it costs us, how we pay for it, where revenues come from, and where those revenues go.
Right. And the millage percentage increases you asked, it was 4.7% for the price index, and 1.04 for population, which equals 4.62 mills. And we had available from the previous year's 3.89. So using the 5.25, we will have an additional 3.26 available for next year, in addition to whatever they allow us to increase.
We could,
So you were right, it was like 8.51
you can go to 8.51 total
at this point.
is our cap for this
That's
year.
our cap for this year.
Okay. I'd like us, one thing I'm gonna bring up, I'd like us to consider going, a little bit further on the garbage fees, to meet in the middle, because we got a couple of jumps to get to where that's breaking even as we bring that back together. We still wouldn't, even if we added another $1 to that, we still would kind of be in the middle of the road for the municipalities that were in there. And I think we need to think a little bit about an additional, maybe couple of mills to, as an increase for the property taxes. The extra 2 mills, I did it real quick here and do you have the sales tax credit factor yet?
We will not get that till probably the fall.
So if we base it on and it looks like this year it's gonna be more than last year based on some other things that we're seeing. But if we base it on last year, that looks like the difference between 5.25 and 7.5 mils on my house would be about $30 extra a year for that additional increase, once you put the sales tax factor into place for those additional 2 mills is what that would do, which is not a significant burden, but will add revenues that, again, we need.
Other comment, discussion? Obviously, you know where you can make that recommendation. Comments, discussion?
Well, I'll just say what I'm thinking. I'm not comfortable, because we talked about it and I felt good about where we were in terms of the increases. And to John's point, and even Catherine, I just, I was struggling a little bit with all of the increases at this time, with inflation, with all of the other issues that people are facing. And so we're just gonna jump on top of that. I just don't feel comfortable raising it any higher than we had already agreed. And so, I feel good about where we were, but I just don't feel comfortable going up higher than.
And I support Alicia's comments as well, because the agreement, when we talked about it through the work session, was that we recognize the need for more, but we're gonna do it incrementally. You combine what people were coming out of individually with the inflation and the unknown, knowing we have the ability to add the millage next year and stuff. I mean, there's a balance between what you would call maybe kicking the can down the road, but also getting your citizens to a point. The lost tax that kind of offsets, that's great. That's, we're happy to have that to generate, and for those who need it the most, I mean, I don't want to use it all up just so. I mean, it's the reward for living in the city of Clemson. So I feel good about the plan we put in place. That's why you build your reserves, and then you address it incrementally as we had discussed.
Comments?
I mean, first of all, when we had the work session, I would have probably been in favor of doing more, but I think we've reached a point where I think we all agreed, or I guess I thought we had agreed, this is where we were. And
We didn't know some things at the work session that we know now.
No other comments? If not, would somebody like to make a motion?
I don't know, Fran didn't have anything.
Oh, Fran. I didn't see his hand.
Okay.
So,
There is one thing I need to add,
thank you.
I almost forgot, and this has to do with recreation. I spoke with Town Central today, and the Clemson Elementary is increasing their after-school care to $55 per week. We are proposing to leave the budget alone. We'll just come out ahead. $45 per week, and that will decrease the subsidy by about $15,000 at the end of next year. And we'll still be $10 under the elementary school.
Currently, we're at 40, right?
Yes, currently at 40, it'll decrease it by 15. That'll help both of us out.
Yeah, he did praise. Okay, Fran, yes. You're on mute, Fran.
I agree with Bob's concern about the recreation differences. Let me just ask a naive question. If we don't do something tonight, can we still change that fee structure at some other point during the year? Or does that have to be done tonight?
You mean amending the budget?
No.
No.
The fee structure for Parks and Rec. We could change those fees right up till when we advertise them.
Yeah, so what,
As long
I
as they're
guess,
not continuing with, yes.
Right.
I guess I'm thinking if we operate under some kind of deadline like that, maybe that'd be a catalyst to get this done as opposed to roll it again a year. And if council agrees that, you know, what the outcome we want to have achieved is whatever increase, Bob, that you're recommending, can we not then push that between now and when this is finally approved, or do we have to make a change tonight in this budget?
No, I don't think the fee increase needs to be in this budget, right, Andy? Like, the fee increase would just generate additional revenue.
You guys
but it's
have
not things that we
adjusted fees in the middle of a fiscal year before. But
We have,
to
Andy?
have this discussion,
Well,
I'm
you're
gonna
not
have to
talking
ask
about,
Mary.
I think it would be more of an issue if you decrease the fees.
Right, and
You
then
know,
we were
came up
gonna
with
have
a deficiency.
a gap. Yeah.
Now, I guess right now y'all are a little bit different situation than in some past years, because you have a more active, Parks and Rec Advisory Board too, so you would need to add in a little time if you wanted them to look at it as well.
The fees are not locked in the budget document, right?
I mean,
Well, they're listed
I mean,
in here.
they're listed as an estimate, but they're not.
But that's,
but it's a net. We've
That's
got a
revenue.
balanced budget for that department for those things, and if it goes up in revenue, we're okay.
Yeah.
Provided expenses don't offset that to where we're negative.
If you
Then
up
we
your
have to come up here and adjust it and say, hey, wait a minute, all of a sudden expenses, and then we'd have to allocate money. So as
Are
long
these
as we're.
fees collected on a sport-by-sport basis?
Correct.
So baseball's already been collected.
Yeah, they,
Or at
we don't
least
charge
advertise.
the same for every sport.
Right.
A lot of cities just do it across the board.
But right, to go back to the earlier conversation, let's assume baseball's already been collected essentially. So the next up is football, right?
But that's.
And that's a central event, is it not? So really the next opportunity is, I guess, soccer or basketball?
Cross country might be the summer.
And I wouldn't worry about the opportunity. I mean, to me, this is something that needs to be engaged on.
Goes back to the municipality talks. We
Yes.
need to have that next, so that's what I would recommend
Right,
personally.
yeah.
Municipalities need to be talking about what's going forward to Bob's point about paying for the service.
But I guess I'm suggesting, Robert, that we put some kind of date or deadline on that, so this doesn't float away again. You know, these kind of issues have a way of floating when other things enter the water. And I don't know if we need a motion, if we have a goal, and I don't know what Bob is thinking in terms of money, but I would like us to have an actual deadline when these discussions have occurred, as opposed to a vague, we'll deal with this next year.
I think you want to set a time frame.
He just wants to set a time frame for the discussion to happen.
So we're not at budget night talking about it again next year.
Which would be part of, you could
Put on the next Park and Rec Advisory
But
Committee.
that's what I was just going to say, the next agenda item.
Yep.
We've got all the fresh data.
For a determination from Parks and Rec we could put a time frame there as well.
Make a recommendation, just go through the normal process.
Fran, does that work if it goes to Parks and Rec and then have a time frame?
Yeah, I mean, as long as we stick with it. And again, I think this is at least the second year we've done this. But yeah, Robert, that's fine, as long as that's a real deadline that we are going to work and achieve whatever the process is going to be, whatever the costs are going to be for next year, however we're going to do it, that we make it definite at some point. I don't know what that point has to be.
And Andy, I'm going to defer to you, or we're going to defer to you in a realistic time frame on Parks and Rec to have that recommendation to City Council.
Depends on them, what questions they have, but I mean, if you
Yeah.
present them the data, that group They do good work. I mean, 60 days?
And so we would have the discussion prior to that, and the municipalities would come in
I'm
afterwards?
just wondering if they might want to meet and discuss it twice, not get it all hashed out in this one meeting, and then you would have your discussion,
Mhm.
and then you'd have first.
But you always have they would have theirs, but then you and Philip or
Philip
whomever
would
would
have
have it. I mean,
yours.
there's a step missing in there. Parks and Rec,
Can we put September timeframe to have?
That sounds reasonable.
Yeah.
That would include Pendleton as well, because they've even reached out to us about it.
At the end of September 30th, it should be done.
Okay. Is everybody in agreement on into September 30th? Yes, okay.
I will volunteer to be part of that discussion, and
As well.
we'll review, would like to review the data and how that's being done.
You have 2 volunteers on city council already. All right. All right, now, would somebody like to make a motion based on first reading?
I'll make a motion that we consider the first reading of an ordinance to adopt the fiscal year 2022-2023 operating budget as been provided.
Second.
2 seconds, I don't,
You can give it to John.
Ladies first.
ladies, all right, Catherine, Beverly, Catherine. All right, further comments, discussion?
Again, I'm gonna say, again, this isn't going all the way up, but on the tax millage, we don't have the number yet. I didn't get a chance to talk to Nathan. I don't think he has the total number yet. We have a massive road, water, sewer. We just found, we're gonna have to come up with $1.5 million if we get the grant for the pump stations, as well. And it is because we haven't done it forever, it's a major mistake to not consider adding additional millage this year that will have a minimum, extremely minimal impact on people. So I think we should have that discussion again.
Are you making a motion or?
He's still got the comment, and I'm gonna chime in. I'm gonna chime in based on that comment too. Well, first of all, it's not $1.5 million, it's $1 million.
Million.
I
It's
just wanted
still
to-
$1 million.
I know. It's still a very large amount. I agree. I just want to clarify that. Secondly, I do feel like, and I'm going to reiterate some of the comments, that our work sessions, we have incrementally taken the next steps to the best of our abilities based on the times we live in. It's a very difficult time for many individuals, but we're trying to catch up as quickly as possible. But we do have a lot of wants, but this is the right step in the right direction. That's
And our roads, water, and sewer infrastructure isn't a want, at all. It's a need, as well. And the
let me
amount
make
of
sure I
money.
clarify. When I say wants, other areas, I didn't clarify which were wants and needs. I think roads are a need, so.
But again, we have a big bill, like, you know, we are going to have to generate millions of extra dollars every year to pay for that and get it done over 15 to 20 years and do it correctly. And by not raising when we can, it's just gonna be more and more and more painful the further we continue to kick it down the road. And again, we're in a time where this increase can have minimal impact, and there may be times when we have to do it when the bigger increases are going to have a bigger impact than they do right now.
Well, yes, Fran.
So just to sort of maybe wrap this up, I think this coming year is going to be awful for lots of people financially, people on fixed income. So it's really going to be a difficult year. And I've asked this question before, are there any formal ways to provide relief to people who truly need the relief to whatever the taxes are? Can you not find a way that those of us who can do this comfortably are going to do it, and people who truly can't, that we look at other kind of strategies that help them not be put in an awful situation?
We can do that as a problem.
We definitely, I know in the water and sewer side, we send people to the charitable organizations that are out there to help, like Clemson Community Care and the churches. So I know that we do advise people when they call us and have issues. I'm sure there's other, folks who get these same calls, but I know in the finance and billing side, Heather's, girls and the staff there really do give that information out and try to help those folks.
I think what Fran's trying to say, and I think we've had this conversation, is a way to avoid it totally, that they don't get, that, not you particularly and not water particularly, that they are not affected by the increases. And I don't think we can do that. I mean, legally, we can't do that.
An idea might be, and I believe you could do this, but last time I saw some pretty significant utility increases. A council member named Jeremy Wright proposed a water saver program. That was funded with the Community Development Fund, which we no longer have.
Yeah.
However, if we could look back and see how much we allocated to that program, you could probably take some ARPA funds and put it towards that. Or we could find a community development, another community development grant. I mean,
I feel like we're kind of getting off track. We have a motion and a second.
So
I mean, these are good things, but these are the ways to help people. But kind of meetings.
If there are no
Out of principle, I'd like to make a motion to amend this to have our millage increase go from 5.25 to 7.25 mills for this year, which would have a $10 per year impact on the $200,000 house.
All right.
That's in the budget.
We have an amended motion.
Or
Somebody,
less than $1 per month.
would somebody like to second it? Okay. All right. Do not have a second. So back to the original motion that's on the table, no other comments. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Okay. And, okay. Unanimous. It was unanimous. All right, next is to consider, thank you for your patience. Are you representing Sammy tonight? Okay. Appreciate your patience.
Sammy owes you.
Yeah, Sammy, tell Sammy that he definitely owes you. So next is to consider a contractual agreement between the peer doing business as Core, and I'm gonna just turn it over to you. Thank you very much. Did you want to add anything to the contractual agreements? The first one is item A for the CAT bus, obviously for fiscal year 2022 and 2023.
Is it for the Clemson University?
This is for the peer, Core.
Oh, the view pier, yes, we have no changes.
No changes, all right. Would somebody like to make a motion?
there is one small change in here.
Oh, there is, I'm sorry.
That is that we're having a hard time retaining our full-time drivers, right? Having a hard time attracting full-time drivers. Part-time drivers on third shift already get a $2 per hour shift differential, and these rates include a $2 per hour third shift differential for the full-time drivers. And the partners all agreed to cover that. That's the only change.
That was in your memo, right? We
Right.
already knew.
Yeah,
Okay.
we knew that. Yeah.
That's why these weren't on the last agenda.
Gotcha.
Wanted to make this change.
Thank you for making sure everybody's aware of that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't know that was.
Yeah, that's, any comments, questions? If not, would somebody like to make a motion?
Make a motion, we approve a contractual agreement between the peer, DBA Core, SBA Seneca, Edinburgh LLC, TCTC, and the City of Clemson for CAT Transportation Services in fiscal year 22/23.
Second. Any further discussion, comments? All in favor, raise your right hand. Can't see Fran anymore, but I assume. Thanks, Lowell. All right. Second is, yeah, we lost Fran. Second is consider a contractual agreement between High Point HOA Flat and TCTC and the City of Clemson for cat bus services in fiscal 2022 and 23. No other additions, amendments that were, okay? Any further comments, questions? Not, somebody like to make a motion?
Make a motion, we approve a contractual agreement between the High Point HOA Flats and TCTC and the City of Clemson for CAT Transportation Services in fiscal year 22/23.
Second. Any further discussion, comments? Not, all in favor, raise your right hand. Fran's back, thank you. All right, last is to consider a contractual agreement between Clemson University and the City of Clemson for cat bus services in 2022 and 23. Whether, somebody like to make a motion?
Make a motion, we approve a contractual agreement between Clemson University and the City of Clemson for CAT transportation services in the fiscal year 22-23.
Second.
Other comments, discussion? If not, all in favor, raise your right hand. See Fran, thank you very much. Thank you for substituting.
Thank y'all
Thank you
so
for your
much.
patience tonight. Please be careful going home.
Thank you, y'all too.
Other policy items, consider a request to approve budget variances for fiscal 2020-21 audited financial statements. Leslie.
Yes, sir. So I was hoping to have the audited financial statements ready for tonight, and, well, or they would be finished today. On Friday, I got a call from the auditor that in the final review, we missed something that hadn't been in the audit previously either, and so it's a last-minute change that was material. So we're gonna get that and be finished with the audit by the end of, around June 15th is the goal, and that we've been given permission by the state to submit our audited financial statements because of our grants. But as I was reviewing, and since this is like my 15th month with Clemson and learning all that there is to know about South Carolina and the city's rules, and one of the things that I talked to Andy about was that in our financials, it states that we have a legal compliance that you as a body are supposed to approve any budget variances greater than 10% or $10,000, whichever is smallest. So, when you receive the final statements, the list that I've provided y'all tonight will be listed in there in the footnotes, and it will not show the reasonings, but what I've listed is why these items were over budget. And we are asking that you approve these items per our own policies. So, and I apologize it's taken so long.
Does anybody have any questions for Leslie on the excess expenditures over budget explanation sheet that she provided? Put in front of me.
It's already been spent, so.
It's already been spent. Not, actually, would somebody like to?
Make a motion that we approve budget variance for the FY 2020-2021 audited financial statements as presented.
Second.
Any other comments, questions? All in favor, raise your right hand. And I see you. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you for your patience as well. Consider authorizing staff to submit a letter of intent to participate in Duke Energy's residential off conversion program.
Thank you.
Ally.
This is a program that I discussed with you all at the last meeting. This is just our formal, notification then that we would like to participate. They did come back with one modification or stipulation, and that was that we can submit no more than 10 per month, and that is because of staffing on their end. With what we've heard back from them in Greenville, the city of Greenville, that shouldn't be an issue. We'll be begging people to participate. But we can go ahead and start getting the material ready, and once we get a signed letter back from Duke, then we can start advertising the program.
Question, was Greenville's 1,500 up to 3,000? Is ours half that, or is theirs 1,500 total?
1,500 total.
Okay.
750 each.
I had that confused.
The only difference is Greenville is providing $300 out of their pocket for the meter.
Other questions, comments? Thanks for all the work on this. And would somebody like to make a motion?
Make a motion, we authorize staff to submit a letter of intent to participate in Duke Energy's residential overhead underground conversion program. Second. As presented.
Second. Further comments, discussion? If not, all in favor, raise your right hand. See you, Fran. Thank you. Thank you, Ally. Thank you very much. All right. Last item tonight, mayor council reports, comments, new business.
The only thing I would like to say is that the Monarch program is moving along at a steady clip. The incredible Tony Tidwell and I are going to the Botanical Gardens tomorrow because hats off to the Botanical Gardens, through a chance meeting. They will be providing us with free milkweed that is thinned from their herd, and providing other extra plants as they can. So we will have a head start at zero cost, on what we're talking about. And we're also going to be talking to, Joe's not here, to the Arts Commission about using these places as a way to build public art and build some other opportunities, since, face it, butterflies are only there 3 weeks a year, so.
Catherine,
Yes,
do you
Fran?
you have Doyle in the loop on this?
Doyle in the loop.
Oh, I don't know if he's in the current loop. The loop was moving pretty quickly, but, right.
You have his email now.
Yes, I do have his email, so yes, as soon as this meeting tomorrow is over, I will reach back out to him.
Okay, quick loop, huh?
Yeah, this is what happens when you talk to strange people who are fly fishing at Nettles.
Nice.
All right, and just a reminder, our no city council next week, but please, I encourage everybody, to know many people on city council, as well as city employees, as well as many residents have come out on the Ave. Please consider coming down there Tuesday night. We can always use the help as well. I know it's never been asked, but you will notice there are people setting up and breaking down if you have time. So we try to do our part and help out if possible. So I'll just put in that plug. Setting up tables and breaking them down. So, yeah, Bob's watching me. You said it. You said
I really
it.
like watching you guys do that.
Yes.
Just want to put on everybody's radar, Juneteenth celebration. Make sure that, you know the dates if you would like to attend. But it's the 18th from 2 to 7, and it's going to be at Nettles this year. So looking forward to it if you are able to attend.
Is it, do we push back to 2:30?
Oh, back to 2:30, thank you.
No, just FYI. Just want to make sure. Any other comments, discussion, anything else you want to share? If not, would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All right, any further discussion? If not, all in favor, raise your hand. And there we go, I was waiting for you. All right, we're adjourned. Have a good evening.
Well, when you